almost exclusively on making the interiors of buildings practical instead of focusing over much, like he said his contemporaries were, on making the outsides fancy looking. Mies van der Rohe went all the way the other way, designing these dark steel rectangular buildings. We call that international style. Now, Mies van der Rohe was a professor right here in Chicago for a lot of his career at Illinois Tech, but not all of his students ended up liking rectangles like he did. On the right side of the moat, these two circular towers on the right were designed by one of Mies van der Rohe's students. These two circular towers are called Marina City. They're from 1968 by Bertrand Goldberg. Goldberg was inspired by nature. He said there are no square shapes in nature. He wanted round, natural shapes for people to live in. Get a good look at this parking ramp above us, the circular open-air parking structure. When Marina City went up in the 1960s, not very many people lived in the city center of Chicago, so in order to attract residents to make the move downtown, Goldberg filled Marina City with amenities. It had its own grocery store, movie theater, bowling alley, skating rink, marina on the river, and those parking ramps above. And folks, having seen those parking ramps, you might have gotten nervous, imagining cars falling right off and into the river. But there's no need to worry, that's only happened twice. That's true. But I should also tell you the whole truth, which is that it never happened on accident or due to foul play. Both times were filmed stunts. Once was for Steve McQueen's movie The Hunter, and the other was for an auto insurance commercial. Now, after this bridge on the right, this red brick building on the right is the Reed Murdoch Center. 111 years old, it's Chicago school style. Now, Chicago school style is defined by being an early example of using internal load-bearing steel. You see, the brick is just decorative. It's steel inside that holds the building up. That concept of using load-bearing steel framing inside the walls, fundamental to modern architecture, was first developed here in Chicago in the 1870s, primarily by architect William LeBaron Jenney, although that building we just talked about is by George Nimitz. But the first skyscraper was a William Jenney building here in Chicago, finished in 1873. It was called the Home Insurance Building, and that first skyscraper was a whopping 10 stories tall. Now, unfortunately, it was torn down in 1930. The reason why it was the first skyscraper was not that it was the tallest building in the world, it never was, but that it was the first relatively tall building to depend on load-bearing internal steel framing for support rather than the exterior stone or masonry. Now, moving along, folks, after this bridge, I want you to pay attention because I always try and point something out next that's worth it, but tricky. So look right where I tell you. We should be able to spot it. If you look on the right side of the boat a bit above us closely, notice there's actually a stone building here. Yeah, I was just kidding. Extra large and in charge, this is the Merchandise Mart. It's easy to spot. The Merch Mart is Art Deco style. Vertical lines, geometric ornamentation, getting narrower at the top with the use of setbacks. All that together, that's Art Deco style. Now, the Merchandise Mart was actually the biggest building in the world by floor space in 1930, with 400,000 square meters or 4.2 million square feet of space. It is Art Deco style. It was designed by Graham Anderson Probst and White and paid for by Marshall Field's department stores to consolidate their warehouses into one giant warehouse downtown on the river. It's a mixed office building today. And up till 2008, the U.S. Postal Service gave the Merch Mart its own unique zip code or postal code. That was 60654. Now, this section of the river is where the three branches of the Chicago River meet. The main branch is behind us, the north branch is ahead to the right, and the south branch is ahead to the left. This fork in the river is called Wolf Point. No one's quite sure where the name Wolf Point came from, but that name is actually older than the city of Chicago. I've always suspected someone probably saw a wolf at some point. Now, as we start to turn north, we're going to look on the left side of the boat, but I'm not going to talk about that building with the narrow base yet. We'll do that one later. First, we're going to look right in front of us. In front to the left is a round glass tower with an arch at the base. Ahead to the left, a glass building with an arch at the base. That is River Point. It's by Picard and Chilton from 2017, and it's LEED Platinum certified. That's Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. Two key factors in making it environmentally friendly is that it was constructed using a lot of recycled materials, and it uses river water to supplement its air conditioning. It brings water in, circulates it as coolant in the AC, and releases it back to the river cleaner than it found it. It's a mixed office building. Now ahead to the left. Ahead to the left is a red brick building. The red brick building ahead to the left is the oldest building on the tour. Not in the city, just oldest on the tour. It's from 1898. It's called Fulton House, originally designed by Frank Abbott to be a cold storage warehouse back when the river was our port. Ships would come in from the lake and dock at warehouses like this to load and unload goods. It's a residential building for the most part today. It's got starfish on the wall and porthole windows near the top. This building was remodeled from an industrial warehouse to residences by architect Harry Weiss. He's a guy who likes boats. He likes to put boat theming on his buildings. He added the starfish.
Look at that old dock right there.
And then ahead to the left, looky here. Ahead to the left, we have this row of 4 townhomes with sloping roofs. They have porthole windows and steel spiral stair towers like boats have. Well, these are the Chicago River Cottages. They're 4 townhomes in a row. They're from 1988, and they're a Harry Weiss original. They were designed by Harry Weiss. All right, after this bridge, there's one more thing about them. So after this bridge, if you look to the left and behind us above the bridge, the 2 sloping roofs of the river cottages are meant to resemble the sails of sailboats racing each other as well. Now, bouncing to the right. On the right side of the boat, we have this long building with long rows of windows. The long building on the right is the East Bank Club. It's from 1979, a high-end exclusive fitness facility. That means expensive gym. Being a high-end gym in Chicago, Barack and Michelle Obama, Rahm Emanuel, Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, they've all had memberships in the EBC. The windows are not original. In the 70s, people were not that interested in looking at the Chicago River. It was dirtier and smellier, with weirder things than us floating around in it. But after the Federal Clean Water Act of 1972, we worked to clean up our waterways, and the windows were added on this and many other formerly back to the river buildings as well, to help people enjoy the improved river view. These days, of course, look on the left, people even like to live along the river. On the left side of the boat is Kinsey Park, a gated community designed by Haynes and Papa George architects. The row homes here that face the river, they sell for around $2.5 million each these days. If the neighborhood sounds nice, and you think you just spotted the cheapest option to live there, I'm sorry to tell you, that green house on the left is not a residence. That's called a bridge house. It's owned by the city. There's another one on the right. The bridge houses house the controls to lift the drawbridge. I'll tell you more about the drawbridges in Chicago later on the tour. All right, let's wait for the next bridge, and then we'll continue once we're under the next bridge. All right, so after this bridge, we're going to look forward to the right. Ahead to the right, in a moment, you'll see a glass tower with white steel beams pointing up the wall in an arrow pattern. That's Erie on the Park. And then to the right of Erie on the Park, in a moment, you'll see a glass tower with white balconies that resemble scaffolding. That one's Kingsbury on the Park. Erie and Kingsbury on the Park are from 2002 by Lucien Lagrange. They're sister residential buildings, and they were entirely designed, I don't know why I said entirely, that came out of nowhere. They are sister residential buildings from 2002 by Lucien Lagrange, and they were Chicago's first examples of European industrial style, which is defined as appearing incomplete or under construction. Now, ahead to the right is a blue glass tower with white concrete corners. Blue glass with concrete corners. Up to the right, behind the trees, in the distance, that's the Montgomery. The Montgomery is a residential building but it was originally finished in 1971 by Minoru Yamasaki, built to be the corporate headquarters of Montgomery Ward Catalogs. Now, we'll talk more about Montgomery Ward in a moment. This park on the right is Montgomery Ward Park, named after them. But before we get there, look directly to the right. There's that little dark residential building just beyond the park, that little dark building. Look behind it. Way in the distance, in the gray sky, beyond that dark building, you'll see two white antennas on a dark steel tower. Two antennas on a dark steel tower way far away to the right. That's the John Hancock Center. It's from 1969 by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. It's the 5th tallest building in town. It was the tallest for 4 years, and it's often confused with our current tallest building in town, but we'll talk about that one later. Now, the Hancock Center is by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. It's mostly residential, and the 100th floor, the top floor of the Hancock Center, was home of the highest up permanent residence in the world for 40 years, from 1969 to 2009. And the first building to surpass it with a higher up permanent residence was actually the Trump Tower here in Chicago in 2009. These days, the highest up permanent residence is not in Chicago. Now, on the right side of the boat, this light-colored building with the dark metal balconies is the old, one of the old headquarters to Montgomery Ward. Now, Montgomery Ward here on the right, this building rather, is from 1912 by Schmidt, Garden, and Martin. It was Montgomery Ward's old headquarters, and it is residential today. Now, Montgomery Ward was a retail giant founded in Chicago in 1872 by Mr. Aaron Montgomery Ward. They were the largest retailer in the world by annual sales around the year 1900, and during their most successful era, they did not own a single physical store. I know they did later, but at their peak success, they were only a catalog mail-order retailer. Now, that was their old headquarters. Then that blue glass tower was their final headquarters from 1971 until they went out of business in 2001. Both are residential. And then here on the right, this huge building on the right is the old main warehouse to Montgomery Ward. Also from 1912, also by Schmidt, Garden, and Martin. It's over a quarter-mile long with about 2 million square feet of floor space. Now, when Montgomery Ward went out of business in 2001, portions of this big old warehouse stood abandoned till about 2004, when the new owner of the building determined to finally lease out all of the space, remodeled it extensively. And while adapting the building, they uncovered about 300 pairs of old roller skates. Those skates were not gifts that never got shipped. Montgomery Ward was always innovating in how to most efficiently operate and encouraged their employees to skate along the warehouse to fulfill their orders as quickly as possible. It wasn't only Montgomery Ward doing it. That was a pretty common practice in the industry back then to have employees on skates. It's very mixed use today, mostly residential on the north end, mostly offices on the south end. All right. Now, as we turn around, we're going to shift gears to a little bit of Chicago history. During my history lesson, I won't be pointing at specific things to look at, so now's a good opportunity to wander around the boat or visit the restrooms and the bar for a moment. I will continue with architecture when we get back to Wolf Point, the junction of the river. So, to talk about Chicago history, let's remember that 240 years ago, this was a river flowing through a swamp on the shores of Lake Michigan.
Arizona was founded in 1912. That building's older than Arizona.
The native Potawatomi people lived in communities all around that swampland. They had trails throughout it, connecting their communities to the river and to the lake, which they used for longer distance travel and trade. Those Potawatomi trails evolved into the diagonal streets in the city today. Like Lincoln, Milwaukee, Ogden, Archer Avenues, the diagonal streets in town are mostly on the same routes that the Potawatomi used through that swampland hundreds of years ago. Now, in the 1670s, about 350 years ago, the first non-native people to explore the region passed through. They were a couple Frenchmen, Louis Joliet and Jacques.
Ellie, go down that way. Yeah.
They mapped out the region. Not much came of it for about 100 more years.
Warner.
When in
that building.
1785, Jean-Baptiste Point de Sable
How old that
became
is.
our first non-native settler.
So cool.
Jean-Baptiste Point de Sable was our first non-native settler. He built the first permanent homestead on the banks of the Chicago River.
Wow.
That was 1785.
Wow.
De Sable was a French-speaking
Look at that.
He came here from
That's so
Haiti
old, dude.
and
Look at that.
popularized fur trader in this region. And then 20 years after De Sable had popularized those trade routes is when the United States first asserted its control of the river by building Fort Dearborn, a United States Army fort right across the river from De Sable's trading post. Now, Fort Dearborn, as the U.S. government's first presence in the region, is represented by a piece of a symbol of Chicago. You might have noticed the flag of
They get in a
Chicago.
fight down there?
We're not exactly subtle about it. It's a white flag with 2 horizontal blue stripes between which are 4 red stars. The 2 blue stripes represent the river and lake, and the 4 red stars represent historic events. The first one is the founding of Fort Dearborn from 1803. A town sprung up around the fort, and like other places around the country, the native population here was eventually forcibly removed as non-native settlers arrived. Potawatomi people, of course, live all around the country today. The largest federally recognized band of Potawatomi is in the state of Kansas today. Now, by 1871, the city of Chicago had a population of 300,000 people, and we reached the event that is our second red star on our flag. When legend has it, on the southwest side of town, a Mrs. Catherine O'Leary went out to milk her cow, Daisy, in the barn on her property. Daisy got startled, knocked over the lantern on the wooden floor, and a third of the city burned to the ground. And that is the legend of Mrs. O'Leary's cow, how the Great Chicago Fire began.
Freaking
and like
women.
all good legends, it's got a kernel of truth. And like all good legends, it's not the whole truth. We'll talk about it later. For now, just note the fire is our second red star on the flag of Chicago. Now, we rebuilt after the fire, and 20 years later, the United States announced its intent to host a World Fair. This fair would be an exposition where the latest technological innovations of the day would be on display, along with cultural exhibits from around the world and modern innovative entertainment. The cities of the United States, all eager to prove themselves as real world cities, lobbied Congress to be selected as the host for the fair. Chicago needed to prove that we were back and better than ever from our fire. We sent our most confident, longest-winded, most abrasive politicians to Washington. They were up against lobbyists from New York, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, St. Louis, and Washington, D.C. itself. But what was special about our guys is that they would not stop talking. They talked and talked, inventing wild arguments of varying degrees of truth right off the tops of their heads, refusing to relinquish the floor, interrupting the other delegations, until eventually Congress simply relented and awarded those rude, blowhard lobbyists from Chicago the World's Columbian Exposition, the World's Fair of 1893. The World's Fair is our third star on the flag, and it was a huge success. We hosted it on the south side in Jackson Park, where today the Museum of Science and Industry is in the last remaining original building from those 1893 fairgrounds. The entire fairgrounds were lit with the largest display of electric lights the world had ever seen, dazzling the 18 million visitors from around the world over our 5-month-long fair. They learned about the world and entertained themselves, and New Yorkers were never too pleased that we got the fair instead of New York. One New York journalist named Charles Dana, having heard of our lobbyists' rude, blowhard reputations, wrote, "I can't believe they gave the fair to those windy windbags from that windy city." Lots of American cities used to call themselves the Windy City, but we have Mr. Charles Dana writing in frustration from New York about our long-winded lobbyists to thank for Chicago becoming the most well-known windy city in the United States. Now, our fourth and final red star on the flag of Chicago is actually another World's Fair, the Century of Progress Fair, which we hosted in 1933, a century after the town of Chicago was organized. The Century of Progress Fair was physically bigger, made more money, had more visitors. We hosted it for twice as long.
Come on, I'll walk you down. I got it. You sure? Okay.
So those are the 4 stars. Oh, actually, I have some time. So, by the way, I don't talk about the Second World's Fair enough, but an indirect legacy of the Second World's Fair, the World's Fair of 1933, has to do with one of the laborers who helped build the fairgrounds. He was a guy named Elias. He lived on the west side of town, and during construction, he would bring his little son, Walter, to come look at the construction site, and eventually, of course, brought his son to come look at the actual fair and have fun at the fair. And little Walter was dazzled by the multicolored, beautiful buildings, futuristic innovations on display, etc., etc. So, Elias and Walter, what was their last name?
Nobody's listening.
Disney. Walter was Walt Disney. And Disney scholars say that a big reason that we have our Disney theme parks around the world today has its roots in little Walt remembering his childhood memories at the World's Fair of 1933 here in Chicago.
Wow, that's
now,
cool.
those are the 4 stars on the flag. Fort Dearborn, 1803. The Great Fire, 1871. The World's Fair of 1893. And the World's Fair of 1933. Easy. The 4 stars are the 4 F's. Fort, Fire, Fair, Fair. Fort, Fire, Fair, Fair. 4 stars on the flag of Chicago. In 2016, the Chicago Cubs won the World Series in Major League Baseball. Some of the Cubs fans thought we should add a 5th star to celebrate their victory, and it would have given us a 5th F to remember. Finally. But precedent had been established by then that we did not add stars for our team winning championships. The Cubs didn't get one just because they took the longest to do it. So for now, it's still only 4. Fort, Fire, Fair, Fair. Hey folks, look to the left. Beautiful view to the river, down the river to the left. We'll continue with architecture in just a moment.
Those subways are cool. Those subways in front of us, those are cool. Get a good one.
All right, folks, so after this bridge on the right, we have this glass tower with an alarmingly narrow base. Here on the right side of the boat, this is 150 North Riverside Plaza. It's by Getch Partners from 2017. And here's how it stays upright. So up to the right, it has these big diagonal steel beams that focus its weight to its central core. And inside the top of the tower, there are 150,000 gallons, or about 450,000 liters of water in a mass damper. When wind blows against the building, the water in tanks on tracks is shifted against the wind to keep it steady. Now, it would stay upright without the mass damper, but it prevents it from swaying nauseatingly on windy days, and actually mass dampers are pretty common. Lots of skyscrapers have some sort of shiftable weight to help keep them steady in a strong wind. Now, Getch Partners were so pleased with those striking diagonal undersides, they reflected back to them with their newer buildings as well. Bouncing to the left, on the left side of the boat, this new glass tower is Bank of America Tower. It's from 2021, also by Getch Partners. The shiny diagonal supports it has are meant to unify it stylistically with the diagonal undersides behind us of 150 North Riverside, both by Getch Partners architects. Now, after this bridge, sticking to the left, after the bridge on the left is one of my very favorites. Here on the left is the Civic Opera Building. The Civic Opera Building was finished in 1928, designed by Graham Anderson Probst and White Architects. It is home of the second largest opera auditorium in the United States, 3,500 seats, home of the Lyric Opera of Chicago, the name of our permanent opera company. Now, if you look up at the whole building, the whole thing is Art Deco style. It's got vertical lines and a big central setback. That's, the big empty space in the middle up there, how the middle is farther back than the front here. Now, also, the whole thing resembles a giant throne. It has 2 armrests and a backrest, and the seat faces west. People have theorized that 20th century railroad businessman, Mr. Samuel Insull, who paid for the building and lived in the penthouse at the top for a year till he went bankrupt, wanted the Opera House to be a throne overlooking his railway business empire to the west, while turning his back to New York, where he didn't get his dream job of CEO of General Electric. It's a great story, and it's not true. The truth is, Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White probably designed those narrow floor plans independently for a practical purpose. You see, those narrow upper floor plans allowed for nice, cooling cross breezes through the upper windows, which was very important before air conditioning was common. Now, bouncing to the right. On the right side of the boat, below the street, right here at eye level, is the train shed of Chicago Union Station. That's where the platforms are on the north side of the train station, where passengers get on and off, though the south concourse is actually busier. Now, Chicago Union Station is the fourth busiest train station in the United States by annual passenger movements, being not only an important cross-country hub for Amtrak, but also being the busiest hub of Metra, which is our regional rail network here in Chicagoland that thousands of residents use to get between the suburbs and city every day. Now, all these buildings built right above the train shed, especially these dark steel ones, they're called the Gateway Center. They're by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, and they have special ventilation systems which take in the diesel fumes from the locomotives beneath them and release those fumes cleaner into the atmosphere above. Now, after this bridge, we're looking forward to the right. Ahead to the right, there's a short little building with dark steel X bracing along the walls. Short building with X bracing ahead to the right. That was a financial trading floor, the Midwest Commodities Exchange, designed by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill with lead engineer Dr. Fazler Rahman Khan. Dr. Fazler Khan developed these X braces to support the roof and avoid using pillars inside, which would have obstructed the sight lines across the trading floor. It was an important innovation in architectural engineering. It's still fascinating. Look quickly, it's both a bakery and a gym. Now, in case anyone was alarmed that I did not talk about the tallest building in the city, don't worry, I always do that when we come back the other way later on. Now, on the right side of the boat, this green glass building on the right is Gateway 4. It's by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, with James DeStefano as the lead. The green glass meant to mimic the green river water. The building curves to mimic a bend in the river, and the convex windows give it a Ripley effect like the surface of water, matching the surroundings like that. That's called contextual architecture. James DeStefano, the lead architect, he really likes contextualism. We have a couple contextual buildings like DeStefano in Chicago. That one's called Gateway 4. It's a mixed office building. Well, it has several names. I learned it as Gateway 4. Now, after this bridge on the right, this limestone building on the right is the old post office. The old post office was the biggest post office in the world. It is a limestone behemoth. Art Deco style, vertical lines with a big setback up in the middle. And if you look ahead of us, folks, the bridge ahead carries a highway over the river and right through the post office, through the first floor of the building. The tunnel that this expressway goes through on the right was an original piece of the building's design, even though the post office was built completely before this roadway was even here. Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White knew to accommodate this yet-to-be-built highway, thanks to pause. Thanks to the Plan of Chicago. The Plan of Chicago was laid out by
building right there, buddy. Look at that.
Planner Daniel Burnham, finalized in 1909. As early as 1909, that Plan of Chicago always
envisioned there being some big
roadway going directly west through that site, which is why the post office was built to accommodate it, even though it wasn't there yet. Some other things we still have in Chicago as a result of the Burnham Plan include our public lakefront, as well as our parks connected by boulevards on the west side of town. Now, the old post office was the biggest post office in the world. The reason that we had the biggest post office was catalogs. We were the mail order retail capital of the world. Montgomery Ward, Sears and Roebuck, Spiegel, among others, were all founded here. And up to the late 20th century, those catalogs and their products were passing through that giant post office that we just sailed by. For the young folks on the boat, a catalog is, if you imagine Amazon.com printed as a book. It would somehow get into your mailbox. You'd flip through the pages, tear out the order form, and mail it back, probably to here in Chicago, to tell them which products you wanted. Those products would arrive not with 24-hour overnight shipping, but between 2 and 6 weeks later. And despite being physical printed books, they still offered a wide variety of goods. In their heyday, these catalogs were often bigger than phone books. For the young folks on the boat, a phone book is, if you imagine, well, anyway, I'll move on. The Postal Service moved out of the old post office in 1997. Directly to the right and behind us is the new main post office, built in 97. Not much to look at from the river, but the lobby is a big, beautiful public space with lots of natural light. And the old post office is a nicely occupied mixed office building today with an elaborate rooftop garden today. All right. Now, on the left side of the boat, here on the left, this curvy concrete building is River City. River City on the left is from 1986 by Bertrand Goldberg. Hey, that sounds familiar. Goldberg, same guy who designed Marina City, the two circular towers downtown. Goldberg had two major philosophies when it came to these big residential buildings. Number one, to use these round, natural-looking shapes, and number two,
that'd be cool to live there, have a suite in there.
Multi-unit residential buildings should allow for community space within them. For instance, River City here has over an acre of shared common space in the center of the building, mostly under a skylight, so naturally lit. Goldberg referred to that feature as an indoor park. Now, actually, let's stick to the left, because if you look way in the distance, directly to the left, we're waiting. Okay, I haven't done this building in a while. So, oh no, right, we can see it already. So, if you look up to the left, right up ahead, you see there's that sort of very boxy residential building that sort of got the red, gray, and beige top. The red, gray, and beige right there to the left. Up and behind it is that slightly curvy glass tower sticking out behind it. That slightly curved glass tower. Now you can see the base is diagonal. You can see directly left in the distance. That's called 1000M. It's a pretty new building. The name comes from its address, 1000 South Michigan Avenue. And that was the last building finished in Chicago that'll be credited to Helmut Jahn. Helmut Jahn was a very prolific architect here in Chicago. He died in 2020, I believe, is when he passed away. And that building, he worked on that design personally, and it is still credited, at least partially to him and entirely to his firm.
Wow.
It's a posthumous Helmut Jahn project. He really liked sheer glass buildings. We have several buildings by Helmut Jahn in downtown Chicago. Now, on the right side of the boat,
wow, that's old.
this big brick building with the smokestacks on the right is the old coal power plant for Union Station. Union Station burnt coal at this plant for till as recently as 2011. It's been empty since then. It's on land owned by Amtrak. It can't become something fun or useful like a brewery because it's still on federal transportation property monitored by the TSA. There'd be security issues with having it be something with customers coming and going. I'm talking fast because I have to get to this. To the right and slightly behind us, in between the Whole Foods and DSW signs, there's a radio antenna tower sticking out behind that shopping center. To the right and behind us, just to the left of the DSW sign, there's a radio antenna sticking out behind that shopping center. Folks, you don't have to look at it for my entire speech, but I'm going to talk about that radio tower. For a surprising amount of time, because it stands on the location where Mrs. O'Leary's barn once stood. So right there where we briefly spotted that radio antenna is where the Great Chicago Fire began, just over there beyond the Amtrak rail yard. So let's talk about it. The Great Chicago Fire began at 9:30 p.m. October 8th, 1871, so 153 years ago.
I remember that.
Right where that radio tower is today. You can see it again now. To the right and behind us, it's above the LA Fitness sign now. To the right and behind us, that radio antenna there. So, the fire started there. It quickly spread east all the way to the lake. By the way, the part of town where it started, at the time, that was a dense working class neighborhood populated with German and Irish immigrants for the most part. The fire spread all the way to the lake. And then over the next 36 hours, from the evening of October 8th to the morning of October 10th,
Wow.
The fire spread north, burning a swath of lakefront property a half-mile wide and 4 miles long, all the way from Roosevelt Road behind us up to Fullerton Avenue on the north side of town. At the end of those 36 hours, 300 people had been killed, 100,000 people were left homeless by the flames, and that was a third of the city at that time. And 3 square miles of the city was burnt to rubble, including our central business district. Now, you might have noticed from my description that the fire crossed the river. Chicagoans assumed the river would protect the east side of town, but to the shock and horror of residents, as the fire reached the river, it was so big and hot that the heat strengthened the wind, blowing burning chunks of wood over the river, continuing the flames on the other side.
Wow.
Now, also, those 100,000 surviving victims, the third of the city left homeless by the flames, most of them stayed right here. Very few of them moved away. Most of them were immigrants with no real connections to other parts of the country, and so were determined to rebuild their lives they had built for themselves here in Chicago, where they would still know their neighbors and communities. Now, about Mrs. O'Leary and her cow. The O'Learys were real people. They had 4 real cows in a real barn, and their barn really was the first building on fire that night. But the story blaming the fire on Mrs. O'Leary was invented by a reporter while the flames were still burning, knowing that scapegoating an Irish immigrant family like them would take advantage of anti-immigrant prejudice at the time and sell a lot of papers. Well, you might think, well, Bobby, that sounds cruel. Didn't you just tell us that the fire really started with the O'Leary's real property? So why isn't it really their fault? Well, because the fire started near their property, the O'Learys were officially investigated in the aftermath of the fire. The investigation did not find any evidence to blame them, citing that Chicago was a dry, wooden city that had suffered through 2 months of drought. Anything as simple as a passerby with a pipe accidentally dropping a match as he lit up could have started the fire. We simply do not know, still today, what started the Great Fire. And the O'Learys, even back then, were officially as likely as anyone to be innocent. Also, that radio tower we spotted is on the property of our present-day firefighter training academy. Right where the Great Fire began is where we train our firefighters.
Hey, look at
today,
this old building
over
coming
on
up right here.
Coven Street, where the O'Leary's front door once stood. Now, bouncing to the right. On the right side of the boat, and directly to the right now, and a bit behind us now, is that block of concrete with the squares carved out of it. To the right behind us, on that bridge, the block of concrete with the squares carved out of it, that's one of the bridge's counterweights. Calibrated to weigh the same as the span of that bridge itself, that bridge is so well balanced on a pivot point with counterweights on one end that it only takes about a 100 horsepower engine to move it down and up. Now that style of drawbridge, balanced on a pivot with counterweights on one end, is called a bastille trunnion style drawbridge. Every bridge that we've gone under today, except Chicago Avenue, is a bastille trunnion style drawbridge. Here in Chicago, we still lift our drawbridges a few times in the spring and a few times in the fall, for the main reason of letting recreational sailboats with tall masts move from winter storage on the river out to the lake where they spend the summer boating season at the marinas, and then back into the river in the fall for winter storage again. So I believe our first bridge lift day of the season is actually this morning. The next one should be this coming Wednesday. Wednesdays and Saturdays through May is our bridge lift season, and then for the fall, mostly around October. Wednesdays and Saturdays in October is when we lift the bridges. Now on the left side of the boat, here on the left, this is Ping Tom Memorial Park. It's the largest park in Chicago's Chinatown. Now, downtown Chinatown is on Wentworth Avenue and Archer Avenue, just beyond the park. Now, Ping Tom, who the park is named after, was a civic leader in the 1960s when the Dan Ryan Expressway, a highway, was built on the south side. The process of building that highway destroyed the parks that this neighborhood used to have, and Ping Tom lobbied City Hall for decades to build the neighborhood a new park to replace what they had lost. Unfortunately, the man himself passed away before any such park opened, and Ping Tom Memorial Park opened in his honor in 1999. And then there, just to the right of that pagoda structure, there's a bust of Ping Tom himself. with a description of what he did for the community in both
Warner,
English and
those trees are pretty.
probably Cantonese, because the Chinatown here in Chicago is for the most part traditionally a Cantonese-speaking Chinatown. And he's right there, but he faces the park, so we can't see his face from this angle. Now ahead to the right. Ahead to the right is the one movable bridge over the Chicago River that's not a Bastille Trunnion style drawbridge. Ahead of us is the Canal Street Railroad Bridge. It is 111 years old and it is completely operational. Dozens of trains a day go over it, and it's still lifted on a regular basis. When it needs to be raised, its central span is hoisted as one solid piece vertically between the towers.
That's crazy.
It used to be operated from right there in that bridge house in the middle of the bridge, but now that structure is mostly locked up and empty, and the bridge is operated remotely from the Amtrak rail yard now. If we were to continue down the river in this direction, we would reach a fundamental reason as to why Chicago became a city in the first place. Because here's the thing. Chicago has always been, and still is today, an inland seaport on Lake Michigan. There is still commercial shipping on the Great Lakes, and Chicago is still a port on Lake Michigan. The port used to be here downtown, but now it's more on the south side. Now, what made Chicago a little bit more special than all the other Great Lakes ports is that we are very close to a navigable tributary of the Mississippi, that being the Des Plaines River just to the west. So Chicago is a place where the shipping corridors of the Great Lakes could connect to the shipping on the Mississippi River and its tributaries with river barges, at first with overland portages through the region, then with man-made canals connecting the waterways. Being that port and portage attracted railroads and other industries, and we've been able to keep that middle of the country transportation hub thing going for us in one way or another ever since. And at this point, folks, I'm going to get off the mic for a few minutes, just a little intermission here, usually about 8 minutes as we head back north. Feel free to ask me questions during this time. You can wave me over or approach the bench. Feel free to ask me questions. Also, wander around, and we'll continue the tour when we get closer to downtown again, usually in about 8 minutes. In the meantime, enjoy the view.
All cops are bastards.
Unbelievable. They wouldn't paint over that? You see that? Right there, ACAB. Yeah. That's what, like, during the BLM riots, they were spraying paint on everything.
I think it was Jerry's story with the Pope. So listen, so I woke up at 2 a.m. and I was like, I hear the burp.
This is cool right here. Look how long this video is right now. I don't know how it's going to run out of space here any minute. I'll just upload it to YouTube, my YouTube channel, and get rid of it.
Yeah.
Just take up too much space on my phone. See that? That's just not classy. What year was that?
Why don't they take that off?
I don't know. I love this old stuff right here. Like, it's so neat.
Yeah.
Some of these buildings are older than Arizona.
Yeah.
The whole state.
I love the skyline. The skyline is just
So neat.
amazing.
It's so neat. I just keep. This is one of the coolest tours I've ever done.
Yeah. So Sears Tower. He hasn't even talked about the Willis.
Yeah, I'm probably going to talk about it now. Is that the tallest one?
Yeah. North America.
Right. It's bigger than anything in New York.
Yeah.
Wow. I like old stuff like this right here. Like, you can picture in your mind, people would pull up right here.
Yeah.
Let me get over there. People would pull up right here and unload stuff and trade, and
Right.
now bums just sleep in it.
I know. It's sad. This is just right for development.
Oh,
These new shiny ones right here.
It'll almost be a crime to destroy this, though, right? They probably don't let them. You probably have people coming up and giving you like, I'll give $30 million to take that spot, just that land. They're like, nope.
Can't put a brewery here yet because it's still owned by TSA or whatever.
You come with billions though,
I know.
and you put like a big something over here in this area, you'd make serious money.
Big ass parking lot over here.
Yeah, I know.
waste of
I was
space.
thinking that too.
Yeah.
I was thinking that too. That whole empty lot over there,
Right. It's like just right in the belly.
perfect.
I'm like so that way. I know.
Hey,
It's like you, I
I always get a weird feeling.
weird feeling. I'm
And
like,
then if you don't check on
the
it,
last 2 days.
listen, and then if you don't check on it, you're like, why did I listen to myself?
now, has she ever been sleeping and you're just looking over her and she wakes up and
Yes.
sees you? No!
No, that has happened. I'm sitting here looking at her and all of a sudden she's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, you're not even opening your eyes. How do you know I'm here?
Wow. She doesn't even want to
You're
respond.
stench, Dad. You're stench, okay?
Yeah, I smell you.
Yeah. Me too.
That's
I just tell my kids, don't ask me to spend the night, dude, because I won't sleep. So just have your friends come here. Don't ask me to spend the night somewhere. Just have your friends come here. Then I'll sleep. My 10-year-old, what do you know when we go somewhere? I'm like, I don't want you to spend the night. Yeah. Even my son, I didn't like my son spending the night places. I'm like, he's like, yeah, but grandpa gets up in the middle of the night and makes us food. What? What? You're never going back there again, dude. What grandpa gets up at like midnight and starts making Friday dinner for the boys? I'm like, you're not going back there, dude.
Yeah, there's something wrong
There's
with
something
that.
wrong with that. You should be sleeping.
So neat. It's almost like fake. It almost looks like a fake, like a paper mache or something, right? Watching on video is going to be cool, but like being just like in anything, you being here is totally different. Wow, I want to take that building to the top floor.
They're giving it to you for a reason.
Right here, dude. This is what you're talking about. Look at this.
Yeah.
Look at all that space, man.
Exactly.
They'd probably have to do like soil testing because all this stuff's starting to
Yeah.
slump down, but fix all that, grade it all up.
Nothing
You could put,
somebody
you could put 5 buildings across here.
But maybe nobody wants to look over the train station.
Oh, God, I love him.
Well, shoot, build a big building. You can look over it.
Right. Exactly.
All right.
See, that's why you have to make sure your mom's not
That first building the guy who designed this the maritime building, remember we went by that with the pedals?
Yeah.
Pedals and the cars parked underneath.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of units for sale in there. Like
Millions.
200,000.
Oh,
But they need all need work, and plus the HOA fees are like $2,000 a month.
if you can afford 200, well, that's not bad. That's not bad. I'm starting to think about that.
You guys laugh at it, but it's so
If I even made a couple mil a year, I'd have a little something like
here.
that. Something.
There was one time it was like 24, 24 a month. And I'm like, what? Yeah, there used to be a lot more. 24, 24. Hold on 1 second.
Oh, I love that. He's so polite, though. How are you? He always like, oh, hello, how are you? Like, he's like,
Oh, he is gotta be a nice.
he's always like, so good today. Like, I'm a sweet kid. Like,
You guys don't live with him. You guys don't live with him.
okay, but it could be a lot worse.
Oh no, that's not. Wait, am I?
I will tell you this.
Have you seen the thing at the top of the Sears Tower that they
Now, what
have?
is that?
Stand like this.
Is that the one I keep seeing on my reels?
Yes.
Oh, hell no. I can't even get to the edge of my room on the 26th floor, and I get close and I'm like, and I'm a military guy.
Open your
Like,
windows?
I can, but
Yeah.
like I can't go up and stand and like lean against the
Oh, I
window.
know.
I get freaked out by it.
Yeah.
Spots I got? Nothing. Okay, the average spot.
No.
Hey, did you get?
They're like, doesn't she do that all the time? And then I'm like, no, she's a setter. What's that?
Hey, did you guys talk about Heidi heard a noise last night? Thought Warner got abducted.
Like, I go into my mom's, I'm going to just tell all my information, dude. I'm going to do that.
It's good. It's good television. It's good television.
26.
I'm going to come by the 26th floor.
We're right up the elevator. He's like, apparently, I'm like, I just came back.
I don't sleep that deep. You can take my daughter out of the room.
You have a CPAP on.
It's quiet.
It's a soft.
If a mouse farts, I can hear it.
Yesterday, I was looking outside of our hotel window, and I was like, the wind was really bad yesterday. And I was like, Dad, that bus just blew over. He's like, what? And so he gets up. He's so scared of heights. He's like shaking and going. He's like, he has his finger on the window. He's like trying to. He's like, I'm so scared of heights. He's like so serious too. And I like sit down. I come to the room and there's like
It's so fun. It was so fun.
I'm like, oh my God.
It was so fun.
He likes all these fake girls. Fake lips.
Warner got me more attention than I've ever had.
That's crazy.
There was this one of she had like the most AI generated background. She was like this. Her lips were like oh no, I skipped past her. Now I'm like, why'd you just skip past her? I promise that's not her.
It was so fun.
Oh my god.
She was prettier, right, Warner?
Oh, she was pretty. I'd just be swiping. I'd be swiping in a she-man swiping left. And he'd be like, oh gosh, she was pretty. Oh no, I'm like,
You didn't read their bio, Warner, okay? Don't be so skin deep.
We ran out of scrolls on Bumble, so we went to Tinder.
It was so
All right,
fun.
folks, so I'm going to get going in just a moment. I'm going to continue the tour in just a moment. Actually, I'm going to start talking now. I'll ease into architecture. First of all, some basic stuff about Chicago. So, Chicago
Look at
has
this
a
boat.
population of about 2.6 million people. That's in the city proper.
Don't nobody want to say hi? Nobody?
Now, with the whole metro area, which 100 years ago, the Chicago Tribune coined the term Chicagoland, that the local media still use for the metro area. Chicagoland
So neat.
has about 8.5 million, and that means that in both cases, in city and in metro area, Chicago is the third biggest in the country.
This video's hitting
Number
an
one
hour
is
long.
New York. Number 2 is Los
My
Angeles.
phone's gonna blow
Number 3 is Chicago. Now, regarding city
No
proper,
space, no
it's
space.
likely that in the next census, 2030, it's not certain yet, but it's likely that by 2030, the current 4th biggest city in the country will surpass us and will be bumped down to number 4. What city is that? Houston, Texas, exactly, will likely surpass Chicago by 2030. But we'll see. We might get one more census out with being the 3rd biggest. Now, also, sort of a very ingrained part of the DNA of Chicago is that for over 100 years, Chicago was the 2nd biggest city in the country. From 1890 to 1990, we were the 2nd biggest
I remember
city
that.
in the country. Los Angeles didn't become bigger than Chicago until 1990, which I think is relatively recent, surprisingly recent for a lot of people when they first learned that. Now, the city itself, we were founded in 1837
Wow.
as the city of Chicago, but 4 years before that is when the state of Illinois organized this region as the township of Chicago. So we were the town of Chicago in 1833. We became the city of Chicago in 1837.
Those
Now, let's
trees
get to
are
some
cool. Those
architecture,
weeping
folks.
willow trees.
Head to the right. Look ahead to the right. There is a silver statue on a dark roof. On
Yeah,
a
I
stone
think they're
tower.
weeping willow.
A good deal ahead in the distance to the right. There's a silver statue on a peaked black roof on a
Oh, I
stone
see 'em right up
tower.
there.
That's the Chicago Board of Trade building. The Board of Trade building is from 1930. It is Art Deco style with vertical lines and
Okay.
getting narrower toward the top with setbacks. Now, the statue on the roof.
This
is
one's
meant to
kinda
be a
cool with
depiction
all
of the
these
Roman
balconies
goddess Ceres,
all the way around
the
it. That looks
agriculture
cool.
and the
That looks really
abundance,
cool.
and was sculpted by Richard Storrs. The reason for the goddess of agriculture there is that the Board of Trade
I like
is an
these bridges.
agriculture futures and commodities
I knew it.
exchange. That's
You're a
like the stock
botanist.
exchange.
Damn, I'm
where they
good.
Trade the future market prices.
I'm rarely
of
wrong. No.
agricultural products. Traditionally and still today, a lot of agriculture finance goes through Chicago. Even still, in the Board of Trade building, that's still the headquarters of the Board of Trade.
one's got steam
now,
coming off
up
it.
and to the right. Oh, and by the way, the glass addition to the Board of Trade, which goes halfway up the south wall there, that was added by architect Helmut Jahn in 1980.
Wow.
Now, up to the right, This pinkish brownish granite tower with the big glass cylinder on top. Big glass cylinder up above us on that brown
Wow.
building. That is the old. No,
That's the
that
tallest
is,
building in the world right there.
It's just known by its address. It's
Look at that.
311
I
South
can't even
Wacker
get-
Drive. It's from the
That's
90s by Cone,
going under a
Patterson,
bridge.
and Fox. Now the cylinder on the roof is a light fixture, brightest thing in the nighttime skyline with bright fluorescent lighting. And the whole reason,
Pause. Pause.
the whole reason that that light fixture is there is, of course, as Cone, Patterson, and Fox's answer to the question, how will our tower stand out next to the tallest building in town? So here we go. Up to the right is that giant, dark steel tower
Right there.
with two white antennas on top. That
Wait,
is
never
the
mind.
tallest building in the city of Chicago. The name
Wow.
of it is spelled W-I-L-L-I-S, pronounced Sears
Willis
Tower.
Tower.
Its original name was Sears Tower. Its official name since 2009 has been Willis Tower.
Yep.
But in our hearts, for the most part, Willis Tower is still the Sears Tower. Now, it is the tallest building in Chicago. It was the tallest building in the world for 23 years, from 1973 till 1996.
Okay.
It was designed by Skidmore, Owens and Merrill, with lead engineer Dr. Fazler Khan and lead architect Mr. Bruce Graham. Now, it was, oh, and by the way, the antennas do not count toward the height. The broadcast antennas on top are seen as appliances added to the building, not part of the building. So
Wow.
they can be removed and replaced. They don't count to the height. The height is measured to the flat roof. So here it is up to the right. How tall is it? 1,454 feet,
Here we
or
go.
443 meters tall, with 110 stories. Let's see here. It was the tallest building in the world for 23 years. Now, let me break that down.
Can I see him up there?
What's that?
You can see those.
Yeah, I don't even want to look.
Those
Ugh.
All right.
things you can walk
I do want to ask us
Oh,
to keep
yeah.
it quiet for me up here on the top deck. I am so happy you're excited about the Willis Tower. I am too. But do let people next to you hear the tour, please. So here it is, our last view directly to the right, all the way from the bottom to the top. Now, it was the tallest building in the world for 23 years. It was first overtaken in 1996. So since then, 29 years have gone by. But here's what's interesting. In the 29 years that have passed, since the end of its 23-year reign as tallest in the world, it's been overtaken over 20 times. It's
Wow.
not even the top 20 tallest
I'm sure there's
buildings in the
stuff in
world.
Dubai
So
and stuff
it
like
was
that.
the
Yeah,
tallest for 23
Yep.
years, and now it's not even the top 20 in only about 29 years. So how does that
That's
happen?
insane.
Well,
There's
it's
buildings
because
taller
the
than
Sears
that.
Tower is as tall as anyone figured out how to build a building out of steel. You see, newer, taller buildings use composite frames, which is generally steel with aluminum and concrete, to make lighter weight but still very strong frames.
Wow.
The Sears Tower, though, over 50 years old, is all steel, and it actually remains the tallest steel frame building in the world. Now, the original owner, main tenant, and company that paid for it was the headquarters of Sears Department Stores. Sears moved out and sold it in the 90s to private equity firm Blackstone. Blackstone sold the naming rights to Willis Insurance Group of London, England in 2009. So
Yeah.
today, Sears isn't around much. Blackstone owns the building, and Willis Insurance owns its name. And none of those companies is currently its main tenant. What's the main tenant of Willis Tower today?
My company's got one in there.
United Airlines, headquarters of United Airlines,
Zell.
is the main tenant
Where I
of
work,
Willis Tower.
Zell's in there.
And folks, I
Really?
have one more
Yep.
thing about it. Give me a guess. How many elevators does the Willis Tower have? Someone says 7. I heard someone say 100. Someone says 25. Folks, it is 107. There are 107 elevators in the Willis Tower. That's because very few of them go all the way from the bottom to the top. If you're heading to an office way up high, you'll have to ride 2 or 3 elevators. That really
I like this
prevents
old
most
stuff,
of the
like
space
this
on
right
most
over
of the
here.
floors from being just elevators, which would make for some
Those are all
sparse
pylons
floor
from a
space.
dock right
Okay, bouncing to the left. Ooh, on the left side of the boat, this limestone building on the left is 2 North Riverside Plaza. It was built to be the home of the Chicago Daily News. It's a mixed office building today. This public plaza it has right there on the left was the first public space deliberately designed to be public along the river in downtown Chicago. It's from 1929. It's the beginning of Chicago viewing the river as a public amenity rather than just an industrial corridor. Now up to the left, after the bridge, up to the left, look at that white steel X. white steel X on the roof of this gray building just up to the left there. Those are trusses on the roof. The south end of this gray building on the left is built over a dense section of railroads leading to the train station. Right under the building, there are train tracks there. And the train tracks take up so much space that there isn't much space left to hold the building up. So instead, the south end of the building is directly structurally hanging from the trusses on the roof, and the trusses only go to the ground around the perimeter. Now, the building itself is from the 90s by Perkins and Will. Perkins and Will is based here in Chicago. The building has been owned and occupied by the Boeing Company, like it says, since 2002, but it was originally built in the 90s to be the headquarters of more of a down-to-earth company, that being Morton Salt. Morton Salt is still based in Chicago, but not in the Boeing building anymore. Hey folks, on the right side of the boat, there's going to be a quick view of one of my favorite little spots. I hope you can try.
Good, I'm at 15% battery. Come on. Wow, that's cool.
The thing about Starbucks is that Chicago was the first city outside Seattle to have a Starbucks. We're the first step that Starbucks took on their journey to global domination. Now, the red brick building on the right, the brick building on the right, is from 1912, but it stands on the location right here on the banks of the river in 1860.
People having dinner right
where
there.
Abraham Lincoln was nominated to run for president in what was a temporary convention center called the Wigwam, a big reinforced tent.
Look at that ivy that's growing on the...
1860. Again, this brick building is another former warehouse. It's from 1912.
So cool.
Now, directly to the right, this green glass building on the right is 333 West Wacker Drive. 333 West Wacker on the right is another great example of contextualism. It's matching the surroundings. Green glass, green river, curve in the building, bend in the river. It's a mixed office building by Cohn, Pedersen, and Fox architects. Now, bouncing to the left. On the left side of the boat, the tallest of these new glass towers is our newest complete office building. It was just finished in 2023. That's the Salesforce Tower. It's designed
huge.
by Pelly Clark Pelly Architects. Now, it stands right there at Wolf Point. You see, Wolf Point is the port in the river, but then it also specifically refers to that part of the land near it, right there where the Salesforce Tower is. That's Wolf Point.
That's huge.
Now, right there where the Salesforce Tower is where 192 years ago, the settlers along the river had a town meeting to decide for the first time what the official name of our newly organized township here would be. What name did they choose?
Chicago. Franklin.
Chicago, not a trick question. It was Chicago. I'll also let you know where the word Chicago came from, but I'll do that in a moment. First of all, look here on the left. Someone asked me to point these out. On the left side of the boat, look in front of the merchandise mart, there's those row of green heads right there on the left. So those are obviously sculptures of important former Chicagoans. Specifically, these are all kings of retail. So we mentioned Montgomery Ward. One of them is Aaron Montgomery Ward. One of them is Mr. Marshall Field. None of them are Sears nor Roebuck, oddly, but one of them is a different executive from Sears and Roebuck, Robert Wood, and another one is Mr. Woolworth. So some old retailers there facing the Merch Mart, which remember Marshall Fields paid to have built. Now, back to the name of Chicago. So here's the thing, folks. The native Potawatomi people, they told French explorers Marquette and Joliet that the river here was called Chicago, kind of. It was closer to Chicago. But our name, Chicago, has always been based on the Potawatomi native name of this river. But we might have looked into other names if we'd learned what the Potawatomi name actually meant.
That's the one we want to go on right there, Jerry.
The place of bad smell.
That's the one we want to go on right here. Look at that.
That's true. It's because the river flowed through that swamp, and in that swamp grew an abundance of a species of little wild, anyone know? Onions or wild garlic. And in the summer heat, those onions on the river would ripen and rot and stink up the place, and that's how the Potawatomi referred to the region. So New York is the Big Apple, and now you know that Chicago is the smelly onion. All right. Now directly to the right, this limestone tower is the LaSalle Wacker building. The LaSalle Wacker building on the right is from 1930. It's Art Deco style, and just like the Opera House, it has that big central setback, which created narrow floor plans to allow for nice cross breezes through the windows. Before
it's getting
eventually had
cold.
air
Woo!
conditioning. Now jumping ahead, after the bridge on the right, this next glass tower with the white concrete corners, the glass tower with the white concrete framing is 77 West Wacker Drive. It's by Ricardo Bofill, and it's from 1992. Now it's postmodern style. Postmodern, look directly to the right. It's got Roman arches at the bottom, modern glass and steel throughout the building, and a Greek temple roof on top. Past and present together, that's postmodern style. And now for something completely different. On the right is the shorter, concrete 55 West Wacker, a great example of brutalism. Brutalist architecture is not meant to be an insulting term. It gets its name from the French word brut, meaning raw, referring to the raw, unpolished concrete exterior. It's from 1968 by C.F. Murphy. All right, we're going to jump a bridge ahead to the right. All right, folks. So ahead to the right is a big fancy stone building. I'm going to talk about the one with the gold on top.
Ooh, that one's pretty. Look at that one with the gold.
Ahead to the right is a big
sun is
fancy
shining
building
on
with
it
a dome
right
on
now.
top. Big fancy
See that
building
one right
with a
there?
dome on top ahead
That's
to the
so
right.
cool.
That's the old Jewelers building. It's from 1927 by Javer and Dinkelberg. It's always been a mixed office building, and it's French Beaux-Arts style.
I always think of the Great
French
Gatsby when I
is
see
defined by having
stuff
an
like
ornate
that,
base,
like classy.
a simpler
Look at
stack
that.
of floors,
It's like
and
gold
an ornate
on the top.
to match the base. Ornate base, stack of floors, ornate top, that's French Beaux-Arts. Now up to the right is this green tower with the golden spire.
That's
the
the one.
green tower with the
Here we
golden
go.
spire up to the right is a hotel, but it was originally an office building. It's from 1928 by the Burnham brothers, two sons of Daniel Burnham. It's Art Deco style, and it was built during Prohibition,
Let's get these
when
people
all
on the balcony. You're
alcohol
fine.
was illegal in the United States. That green tower, tapering up to a decorative golden topper,
it's so pretty.
is meant
Look
to
at that
resemble a
skull.
champagne bottle in protest to Prohibition. It's the only building in the city clad with green terracotta, and the gold on top is real gold leaf. Now,
Wow.
on the left side of the boat is the
Okay,
Trump
let's go
Tower,
left.
officially the
Trump, baby.
International Hotel
Back to where we
Tower.
started.
This very tall glass building is the second tallest building in the city of Chicago. It was finished in 2009, designed by
man,
Skidmore,
Mom.
Owings and Merrill,
How did he
with
only go
lead
second
architect
there?
I know.
Chicago
Come
born
on,
and
Trump.
raised, Mr. Adrian Smith.
Gee,
Now, here's what I
money
want you to know.
Christmas. Look at this.
The second
Start
highest
down here.
roof of it is the
Water.
same height as our first building, AMA Plaza behind us. And the lowest roof of the Trump Tower is the same height as the building with the clock tower ahead of us. Those roof levels were intentionally designed by lead architect Chicagoan Adrian Smith to provide continuity with this new building's
Wow.
older neighbors. It was finished in 2009. It's the
Looks like
second
it's the
tallest
end of our
building in
tour
town.
right
That
here.
includes the permanent decorative spire on top, bringing it up to 1,388 feet, or 1,388 feet, 343 meters.
Look how busy it is up here, right over here.
Oh,
There's
here. I
a
think
bunch
that's
of.
right.
We saw a
think
bunch
that-
of weddings going on right here in
but For
this.
some reason, I'm not confident.
Over here
right
by
now.
this other boat
1,388
above
feet is
it.
Definitely right. 343 meters with
Now
98
up here, there's a bunch of
stories.
people walking
now,
across
we're
the
gonna
bridge.
talk about the Wrigley building at the end of our tour. For now, we're going to look on the left.
Uh-oh. I guess not the end. That one looks like a castle. Hold on.
So directly to the left, behind the Apple Store, is this limestone tower. The limestone tower to
Let's
the
see.
left
I'm
is
gonna go
the
up.
Tribune Tower. It's from 1925 by Hood
at
and
that,
Howells,
right there.
when the Tribune held a contest seeking the most beautiful design for a new office tower to
Beautiful.
be their new home. They
That's
selected
amazing
this
architecture,
neo-Gothic
dude.
Art Deco
That's-
style design,
that's beautiful.
submitted by Hood and Howells as the winner. The Tribune paid for the building's construction and stayed in that building till 2018. It's a residential building today. Still embedded in the walls of the Tribune Tower are chunks of newsworthy things that journalists brought back with them over the decades.
Wow.
Pieces of the Berlin Wall, the Great Wall of China, the Alamo,
Wow.
the former World Trade Centers,
So
many
neat.
other newsworthy things visible and labeled on the outside of the building. Bouncing to the right.
Almost
Directly
done.
to the right, not ahead of us, but directly to the right, up in the background, is that tall, white, rectangular tower with parallel windows like pinstripes up to the top, up in the background. That's the Aon Center. The Aon Center was originally the Standard Oil building, finished in 1973, designed by Edward
I couldn't
Durrell
imagine.
Stone. Now, it's an office building. It's the fourth tallest building in town. It was the tallest for a couple months of 1973, until the Sears Tower surpassed it. Now, Edward Durrell Stone originally clad that tall white building with imported Italian Carrara marble. Expensive stuff. Made the whole building glisten beautifully on sunny days. But after 9 years, those plates of marble, 3/4 of an inch thick, started to crack and fall to the sidewalk. Now, the city made the architects reclad it in a sturdier stone, and what's up there today instead is Carolina granite. The process of replacing the marble with the granite cost $80 million, half what it was to build the building. It was an expensive mistake that goes to show never take marble for granted.
Oh, look at that building. That is insane.
Yeah. Now, folks, that's true. It's not only the setup to a terrible joke. It's all the truth. I'll admit that my delivery on it can be a bit rocky, but it's important to me that you understand that my boss hates that joke and he takes real stones to tell it. Now, ahead to the right is this very tall blue glass
Beautiful.
tower
Look at that.
with a bit of a wiggly
It's like a
shape.
champagne
Very
bottle.
wiggly blue glass tower up to the right. That's the St. Regis, Chicago. The St. Regis was finished in 2020. It is currently the third tallest building in town at 1,200 feet or 365 meters with 101
there.
stories. It's also currently the tallest building in the world designed by a woman, a lead female architect.
Oh, jeez.
That woman is
Girl
Jeannie
power.
Gang. Jeannie Gang is based here in Chicago. Her hometown is Belvedere, Illinois. And her firm, based in Chicago, is called Studio Gang.
That's why it's so
Architects.
pretty,
Now,
right?
Way up near the top.
We don't
there's a
care
gap.
about pretty.
2 floors seemingly missing up near the top of the
Wow.
St. Regis. So as the building went up, the steel frame started to show a bit more potential than their calculations had shown
Wow.
them, that it would bend in the wind in extreme conditions. Now,
Smart.
we always knew that it would bend somewhat, but it was showing more potential to theoretically bend more in extreme conditions when it actually started going up in a real atmosphere. And the problem was not that it was going to fall over, that was not the issue. The issue was that the steel frame could maybe bend enough in extreme conditions that possibly some of the windows could risk cracking, because glass doesn't bend nearly as much as steel does, it just breaks. So in order to protect all the windows to ensure
Beautiful.
that even in extreme conditions they'd stay intact,
Man, this video
they
doesn't
had to
do
relieve the
justice. These
pressure
windows are
by
like-
letting the wind blow through.
Some of the
As
panes are
windows
like
fall,
pink,
they blow through people.
some are
The
light blue,
elevators,
some are dark
utility
blue,
shafts, and stairwells
some are really dark
still
blue.
enclosed in the center of
They're
that
super
space.
shiny.
The hotel rooms at the St. Regis
That one's cool,
go for
too.
$1,000 a night, so keep that in mind when you visit next.
Pocket
And
change.
but some of the most expensive high-rise residences in Chicago are the penthouses in the St. Regis, selling for around $14 to $15 million. Now, as we head toward the easternmost point of our tour, let's talk about the river. In the city of Chicago's earliest days, we treated the Chicago River as any industrial city of the 19th century would treat a river. In a word, badly. We threw all of our waste, sewage, into the river.
Look at that carnival wheel over there.
The river was thus an open sewer flowing right into Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan is our source of drinking water. Now that sounds like a problem. Being Chicagoan, we worked hard to make it someone else's problem. And instead of solving the issue, we just made it go away by making the Chicago
curves, look
River
at the curves
the
on
only
this building.
natural
Oh, that
river
is
in the
cool.
world
The wind.
permanently
Yeah, that's smart. The way they
reversed
do that.
by humankind.
Look at that. That one's cool.
It's true.
Look at
And
these
here's how.
boats over here. These like
Not far to the
cruise.
west
It's probably
is the
personal
Des
yachts. You
Plaines
see
River.
those up there?
Naturally separate
Or they
from the
could
Great
be
Lakes
like-
that flows toward the Mississippi.
Man.
To carry our waste away, we connected
There's
the
some marinas
Chicago to
down
the
here.
display
There's some too.
by building a canal between
Oh, yeah,
them,
see that old
named the
Navy
Chicago
boat over there?
Sanitary and Ship Canal. And at 3 a.m., January 2nd, 1900, we blew up the dams we had built separating the rivers from that canal. The Chicago filled in the canal, connected to the display.
Look at that Chicago Fire
at a
Department.
lower elevation
That's so cool.
than the lake. So with a new lowest point to flow toward, the Chicago River reversed, taking water for the first time from Lake Michigan to the Mississippi River Valley to the west. Not all of our neighbors were.
And then there's the older fire department tugboat, probably.
Feat of engineering. In fact,
Out of
our
commission?
neighbors around the lake,
Lights
the
are still on.
states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Indiana jointly sued the state of Illinois in federal court for draining.
Oh,
the
there's
lake
one leaving.
and
Oh,
proved
that's
that
just
eventually
another tour
our
bus.
river would take so much water from the lake that parts of the lake would cease to be navigable. So we were forced to build, ahead to the right, the Chicago Harbor Lock. Those gray gates ahead to the right, that's the only direct connection between the lake and river, but it still separates them with a series of closable gates. Built in the 1930s for one reason, to slow down the
navigates it
flow
left, right?
of lake water, and currently still reversed, but much, much cleaner and healthier and better taken care of than it once was. Chicago River. And yes, boats still go through it every day, well, except in the winter, not so active in the winter. During the summer months, this lock is the busiest lock in the country for recreational boat traffic. Now at this point, folks, I'm going to get off the mic for just a moment. Enjoy the view. Remember, do not stand on the chairs or the benches. I'll get back on the mic in just a couple minutes.
Dare you stand on the Julia, dare you stand on the chair? Dare you face? Come on.
Me on the chair. Oh, and actually, this is small, guys. That's so pretty. Look at that. Hey, Heidi.
She did it.
Are they going to throw me off the boat?
That's gorgeous, baby. Yes.
Yep. Ready? He will. I won't do it ever again. That is so pretty. Mom, look.
What? Wow. Put that one
Oh, that's cool.
Pretty cool, huh?
Great town.
It is. History here, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I feel like you can actually like see most of it. Like where New York can take days and days.
Right there.
Here, like,
Nothing cool.
Yes. Everybody's
Let me
wanting.
get out of the way so you guys can take a picture, okay?
Here, I'm gonna get one.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I get a picture out?
So cool.
Or do you want me to go over this?
Uh-oh, Bubba crashing out? No. Okay. A bird almost.